we went on bivouac. I said it went down to 0 that night. The next day, it didn't get above 0 all day. And that night, it dropped to 20 to 25 below 0. The entire 2 weeks we were out there, it stayed to 25 below 0 or more.
25 below
0.
Oh, my God.
We get up, you take your mesh gear, you put it in the hot water to warm the pan up. You stick it under to get the eggs coming off the griddle. And then by the time they hit the pan, they were frozen. All we could do was go over and shake them out into the garbage pit. So we actually had, they gave us oatmeal too, so we actually were living on oatmeal and coffee.
Oh my God.
But we got through, and Christmas Day, night before Christmas, they brought us back in, and we stayed in the barracks overnight for Christmas. Then the next day we went out, a day after Christmas, we went out again onto the field. And we came back in after around New Year's.
The 18 weeks, though, that you were in camp learning, so you didn't have any previous medical type experience before they told you were going to be a medic, right?
Well, I did.
You did?
Most didn't.
What was your background?
I was a Boy Scout, so I had learned some first aid. So
very cool.
But anyway, when we went during our basic, we had to learn. The medics had to learn how to set booby traps and how to disarm booby traps.
We
had
traps.
A course in that, so if we ran into any occasions, we would know what to be able to help and save. And one of our fellows during the war in the Hoboken dismantled a booby trap was put on one of our soldiers who was wounded by the Germans. And when he went to, the medic went to take care of him, he turned around, the guy was conscious, and he told us that he was booby trapped. So the medic had to first disarm the booby trap before he could treat him.
What did the booby trap look like if the guy himself had it on?
Sometimes you have low explosives, sometimes you had bigger ones. But most of them were small explosive. You touch a thing, it would blow up on you or something. And just the way you would pull it or something. And it varied. Now, one town, I'm jumping way ahead, but one town during the Bulge, the town of Eckernach in Luxembourg, they turned around the whole town. The jewelry store and all was booby trapped by the Germans. So if any of our guys would go in and touch anything, they would blow up and lose their hands or get killed or something. So they did work very good in a lot of cases.
So you learned how to build them, though, too,
We learned how to assemble them, right, and what to put together and how to hook them up for different occasions. And our main purpose was to dismantle them. So and then we had a course. We'd turn around and we would, different days, we'd turn around, go over and booby trap the platoons in basic training. The first and second platoon covered each other, the third and fourth platoon would take care. And we worked back and forth. And we would go over and booby trap the fourth. I was in the third platoon. And we would booby trap the fourth. They were over booby trapping our place. So then we had to come back and see if we could find the booby trap and dismantle them. Just to get, they didn't have explosives on them at that time, but they would flick off. But anyway, that's how we learned. And we got acquainted with the different barracks. But we had to learn all that in our basic training. So one day you have some work in the field, then you come in and have classes on medical classes and all. And we have first day after the guys got their first pass, we had one on VD and how we had to go in and treat it and the different probes we had to use, taped up probes, and you had to go in and then get it real bad. You go in and cut it and all. We had them. So a lot of guys got sick watching and going through it. But But we had to learn all that stuff. Well, so when you got in, you didn't know where you're going to be. Where you're going to be on the field in battle as an aid man, where you're going to wind up in a battalion aid station as a litter bearer or a medic, take care of the wounded as they came in. So you never know. Or you may wind up going to a hospital, being part of a hospital group, which I did at the end. I'll try to remember to tell you that.
You did a lot of different things,
yeah.
Man. So I'm just trying, I'm doing my best to put myself in your shoes, and it's really impossible, given that literally the freedom of the world was on the line. Right. And also, you're like 19 years old when this is happening. I
turned 19 doing basic training.
Yeah.
I turned 20 during the Battle of the Bulge.
We'll get there.
Okay.
But that is insane.
So I just wanted to...
Because before you even get to the theater, right? We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Right.
And everything you saw there. What I want to know is there any reality setting in your head while you're in training where you're saying to yourself, like, shit, I am about to go into hell?
No, I don't think we thought that, because you keep getting new orders and do this and do that, that you paid attention to what you were doing and you didn't think ahead or imagine this or that. And we had no idea really what war was. We really wasn't in a war for so many years, So people didn't know what war was. We heard about it. We were in North Africa. In 42, I think we went in.
That's right.
And 43 in Sicily. We're in Italy, right, in Sicily and all. So, and those fellows are only starting to come back. A lot of them were wounded and all. But you had no imagination of what war was really like. And like in Normandy, the battle we fought through the hedgerows in Normandy was so much different than the battles we fought after we got into the open plain. We changed our system of how we did things and all. No orders, but we just seemed to make changes to give us a better going and what we thought would be better.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the strategy of the war itself and the way that the American military and the British military and the Allies altogether, the Soviets as well, totally changed the game in how they won this thing. It never gets old to me to study that stuff, because it's truly amazing what they pulled off.
When you learn by doing, you think different things, and next time you try to avoid it and do something different to try to improve it.
So many of the veterans who I interview, were young men, obviously, at this time, and you ask, a very reasonable question. You're 19 years old. You're no dummy. You're going to go into war. You could get killed. Do you think about it? But overwhelmingly, the answer I hear from the veterans is that it was an adventure. And for so many of them, when you're 19, you're invincible. Mm-hmm. And as Jake mentioned, besides some of the men of the country who fought in World War I, the U.S. for such a long period of time had been a largely civilian majority country. You didn't have eons of generations of military families like we do have today, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq. I think at the start of 1940, the U.S. had the 18th largest military in the world. We were behind Uruguay. and most people, so we had 183,000, right?
Yeah, not only that, when they were training, they didn't have guns to give the fellows a train. And,
oh my God.
And when we went to war, they turned around and they say they were given brooms to carry as a rifle to practice the manual.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing in Ukraine last year, too.
Well, probably. Yeah. Because they don't have the equipment. They have to train them. And that's what they... but we were lucky by time 43, they were getting equipment. Even though they never gave me a rifle or a pistol.
Well, you got one. You went and
Now,
got your own.
I brought one home anyway. But
I think, Jake, you told me in our interview, didn't you say you seriously considered suing the government for sending you into
I'm
harm's
just
way?
saying, now we hear all the suing going on in the government. Can I sue the government for sending me into battle? Means the courts have already authorized that everybody's allowed to carry a gun.
Yeah.
Or have a gun. So
That's
now can I
crazy.
sue the government or the tens of thousands of medics who
That's
serve?
crazy they didn't let you guys carry a gun.
Joint lawsuit,
Well,
absolutely.
there was a reason for it.
And why was that?
In Europe, Germany recognized the Geneva Convention.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
This is
But
news to me.
the Japanese did not recognize it. So in the European theater, there was no carrying the gun. Even some guys, I understand, on their own carried their own gun. But they were never issued. The Pacific, I don't know. Some tell me they didn't carry a gun. Some tell me they did. So I don't know.
That's interesting that the Nazis observed the Geneva Conventions.
Right.
It doesn't really, in my head, when I think of history, it doesn't really jive.
Right,
that
yeah.
The people building gas chambers observed any kind of conventions. But
That
that's
was
crazy.
the reason they gave for us not receiving any guns or carrying.
Well, keep in mind, though, I mean, the Geneva Conventions were right after World War I,
Yep.
right? So it was before Hitler got into office or any of that stuff. I think Germany maybe was hoping to be a normal, civilized country.
Didn't work out.
Yeah.
They had to rebuild. And, he built that Autobahn and all, which was the thing for Eisenhower when he came back to build the highways across the country.
Yeah.
So
It's
we
really,
learned a lot from the war, too.
we did. You're right. It's really amazing when you look at the how opportunistic
Right.
Hitler was, because the Great Depression is what ended up giving him his opening, because
That's
it
right.
affected them over
That's
there.
right,
Like
that's true.
what we did bled over to them, and then he was like, "Oh, you're all poor now, so you got to listen to me," and then put in some economic things, and then said, "By the way, we're going to do 100 million other things here, including like getting rid of everyone who's not white," and people are like, "Oh," and
Yeah.
then they went along with it.
What? Yeah. I mean, isn't it true, Jake? After the war, you couldn't find a Nazi, right? All the Germans you guys would encounter during occupation. A lot of the veterans who I meet, that's what they mention. They say the Germans who they would interact with, the first thing they would say is, "I'm not a Nazi."
Well,
But if you look at those pictures from Nuremberg, those early rallies, when things were going good for the Germans, a lot of them supported Hitler.
everybody had us. You go out and you didn't support them, they'd shoot you or lock you up. So either you go out and you act like you're interested and you're a part of them, or you don't.
Yep.
That's just a thing today.
Yeah.
Our country's the same way right now.
Mm.
So
Did you had said your dad didn't really talk about World War I because of his experience there.
It never got any details about it. The only thing he mentioned about France, when you went into France, all the along the corners and all, they had the latrines, like where they just go in and go to the bathroom.
On the corners?
On the corners, yeah. And
In the
or-
trenches?
Huh?
In the trenches?
In their
No,
quarters.
no.
Their
No,
living
the
quarters.
French people lived that way. In the towns. In the towns. I'm sorry.
I missed the boat on that one.
When we went into Cherbourg, we turned around, we were up in a building, and right down in front was a latrine right in the middle of the wall. And they just had a cover around it, and men and women both go in and use the same one. And they thought nothing of it.
Convenient.
Right.
That's right.
That's what it was for, convenience.
But when you got your orders to go to basic training and you got drafted and you leave home, was there any type of conversation with your dad, not necessarily about his own experience, but about the weight of what you may be undertaking?
The only thing is, I was a friend of our family. From the veterans, VFW post. He turned around and he stopped by and he said to my father, "Did he ever talk to me about any of the thing?" And my father said no. So he turned around. He just got out of the Air Force. Had been in, and he became 38 years old. So he was discharged. And so he turned around and was talking to me about the women, and he had to watch all these women and all. When you go to towns, different towns and all.
So not with your dad, though. So,
No.
So you just kind of left and went and did your thing.
I do.
Okay.
Do you remember the last time you saw your folks before you shipped overseas?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you that later.
Yeah. Oh, you'll tell us that later or now?
Well, we turned around after we left Shenango. They sent us from Shenango, which was 3 weeks. They gave us some new equipment and upgraded our equipment, what we had. And the next day, we were packed up and put on a train. From there, from the depot, from the Camp Shank, they put us on a train and shipped us down to Hoboken, New Jersey.
Where we are right now?
Where we are right now. We got off the I knocked
Yeah,
out.
you're good. You're good.
We got off the train and walked over and got on a ferry boat. And they turned around and took us on the ferry boat across to Manhattan to a pier. Now, when we got off and got on the pier, we're walking up the pier, there was a big ship on our left side and one on our right. The one on the left, they said, was the Queen Elizabeth. The one on the right was the Queen Mary. We went up the gangplank of the Queen Mary, so we sailed on March the 21st. I left about noontime of the 21st, and we shipped out for England, Europe.
Did you go, what base in England did you go to?
We turned around, we sailed out of New York Harbor, up along the coast towards Iceland.
Mm-hmm.
When we got near Iceland, they turned and went across the stretch there. And our first morning on the high seas, we were on a British ship. They served us oatmeal, and the next course was blood kidneys.
Oh, nice.
That was an English breakfast, which we didn't know. But nobody ate blood kidneys.
Yeah, it sounds
Americans.
terrible.
So we turned around and we lived on the oatmeal and coffee all week. But then we finally, when we got over, we went up and we got over near England. And I think the day before, we picked up a submarine reading. So they turned around, since we didn't, since the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth and the bigger ships all traveled without convoy, traveled without the convoy. We had to, and so the captain had to outrun them. They feel they could outrun the submarine. So they turned around and the captain made a big circle, and it took us a whole day. So we were one day late getting into our thing, but we came back and around into the English Channel and up the Irish Sea between Ireland and England. We sailed by Liverpool on up into Scotland, and we docked right off of Scotland, and it was Greenock, Scotland, where we got off the ship. They had to take us off on smaller boats and bring us into the rail station.
Did you, when you're saying submarine, you're referring to German U-boats?
German U-boats,
right?
That's right.
German U-boat. So the captain felt like he could outrun them.
So he was outrunning them. He lost them on that day. So we went up the English up into Scotland, and then when we're standing on the train platform waiting for our train to come in, we're looking out. About a mile or so, you see in the distance this here church steeple. So we're inquisitive, asked where that was, because we didn't know where we were. And they told that was Glasgow, Scotland, the church. So anyway, when the train came, we all got on the train. We boarded the train, and we went through the Scottish countryside the entire day. And when we got into Liverpool, England, that as it was getting dusk. and it didn't get dark until after 11 o'clock at night.
Really?
We were on double British summertime, so our days used to, during the summer, I think, daylight lasted up to midnight.
Wow. By the way, Rishi, I see you over there. If the headphones are going out, don't worry about it. Just twist them like
Thanks.
that on the thing. But
While
you're
doing
good.
that. So Jake, just try to keep it in front of you.
Yeah, you're doing great.
I bumped
you're
it.
Doing,
I bumped it.
No, that was me. I'm moving it.
You're
Oh.
doing
I just
great.
want what you're
I
saying.
thought I bumped it.
What you're saying is so incredible. We just want to pick up every word.
Yeah, your voice is really good. I'm watching your levels the whole
Oh,
time.
is it?
Yeah,
Saying?
you're doing great.
But
so,
anyway.
yeah, let's continue where you were.
But anyway,
you get on the
we
train.
landed in Greenock, Scotland. We got on our train,
Mm-hmm.
and we traveled through the Scottish countryside, which is now beginning of spring over there also. So it was the 28th of March when we landed. So they turned around and we went on into England, and we got off the train in Liverpool, England, which is the northeastern part of England, Liverpool. And they turned around, and while we're waiting for our train now, it's getting dark and dusk setting in. And you look out over the town of Liverpool, and we see all these blown out buildings.
Yeah.
And just shells standing in front of you.
Yep.
And all was blown out. And I got such a funny feeling, like I was standing in the middle of a battlefield.
Yeah.
But that's the way it hit me. But anyway, when our buses came, they put us on and took us about an hour and a half towards the Manchester, England. And it was a camp there called Alton Park, they called it. Well, that camp was an engineer camp, which they were supposed to only bring engineer, I guess, in. But for some reason, they took us in there. So for the first 2 weeks, the cadre of the camp was engineer, so we did engineering work. We were supposed to learn medical training, but we did engineer. And then the last week, they took us out in the field and devoted that to giving shots and how to wrap bandages and everything in the field.
And you still don't, at this point, have any idea where you're going to be going?
At this point, we had no idea. Then they start turning around and breaking us up and shipping us out to different locations. Now, I was sent down to, with a group, I knew none of them except from just being with them. And I sent down to southeast, it was about halfway between the English Channel and Bristol, the town of Bristol. Now, Bristol was a manufacturing town, and it was an important hub for the British. Well, anyway, they turned around, and we were halfway between. Now, on our one side, it seemed like there was a lot of airplane. It must have been an airfield because these cargo planes were coming in and out. And then later on, we find out that a lot of the fellows were living in homes and all. They're not just in barracks. So anyway, the rest of the outfit, when it was broken up, went to different things. Now, one fellow I'm going to tell you about later, him and I was drafted together. We went all through basic training, all through the medical training, and shipped out together. And we were together and separated in northern England. And we turned around, and during the war, I'm going to come back to this. And then during the war, we'll turn around and we met each other.
Whoa.
So, but anyway, on the 4th of June, the Germans came over to make a bombing run on Bristol.
Really?
The town of Bristol.
Yeah.
And the yak was so heavy, I said I never saw a German bomber maneuver to escape the flak in the aircraft that German pilot did. But he put that plane like it was a pursuit plane. Here we didn't realize he had a whole load of bombs on board. He got over Bristol, dropped his bombs on his target, and came back.
Yeah.
The British claim they got him going over the channel, but it's hard to believe. But I never saw a German bomber with a full load of bomb dive and everything else to avoid the flak.
Yeah, that part of the
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That book I was telling you about earlier talks about the similar things that you saw. I had no idea how tactical this was for so long, where they would do this. And the way the technology was back then, they basically had enough to fly to the target, drop, and then they had to get back.
Right, that's
because they run out of gas.
That's right. That's the problem. But anyway, after that bombing, then we turned around and during that bombing, we had no holes to get in for security, had no place to go for security. There was a little wooded area at the end of the patch of ground we were on. So we all had to go down, stand there, and we were watching the planes. That's why we could see how they were maneuvered and all.
Whoa.
And about a month and a half before the D-Day was scheduled, or the 5th of June, they turn around and they start painting the white circles on the stripes, the white stripes on the fuselage of the bombers, and or on the planes, our planes, and on the wings. And the reason it made sense, because when our pursuit planes were flying at a German 109 looked like a P-51 at a glance. Only one had more curves to the outer wings, but when you're flying and diving on them, you can't recognize. So by having those marks on there, they could our American plane could identify the Americans easier than the German. So if they didn't have the marking, they shot them.
It's crazy how, because they're moving so fast throughout the clouds in the sky, and you got to try to make sure you have your own.
So the stripes would catch your eye right away.
Yeah. Now, you said, if I heard it correctly, on June 4th is when you witnessed...
Was that bombing. And June 5th was the scheduled landing, D-Day landing. But due to the weather condition, they had gotten very heavy storm, and the channel was really rough and heavy storm. So they turned around and Eisenhower postponed the landing. Now, a lot of guys were in some of these smaller boats. We're going to cross on smaller boats. And they turned around, and a lot of them got seasick from the heavy waves. But they turned around, and the next, on the 6th, they got a report. The Eisenhower staff got a report that the weather was supposed to break for so many hours. We'll say maybe 12 hours or so. It's going to be, so it would calm down a little. So Eisenhower made a decision that they would have the landing on June 6th, the morning of June 6th. And that's when the D-Day was officially scheduled for the 5th, wound up on the 6th. And D stands for date of, and H stands for hour of the first troops moving on that.
When were you first apprised of the plans for what were going to be D-Day? Like, when did
we
you
didn't
find
have
out?
Nobody knew the plan.
No one knew.
And the lower echelon.
Okay.
Now the higher echelon, the colonels and generals of divisions were given briefings up to at that point by the British and all of what they were saying. And when the 4th Division, now I just read an article, I didn't know it, but when the 4th Division was training for the landing, they trained in the States, then they went over to England and they trained over there.
Yeah.
And a month before the D-Day was a maneuver called Slapton Sands. And when they were practicing this maneuver for the landing of the 12th Division going in and the 4th Division going in on D-Day, they had a big ship was supposed to be similar to the one they were going to land on in France. And when they were going in, the German U-boats came out of Cherbourg and caught the convoy and sunk several of the troop ships. I forget how many, 600, 700 were killed. And the landing itself was called off. And two fellows I knew who were two fellows were on the beaches waiting for the landing to happen to observe how they were the sergeants in the battalion sergeant. So, I'm staff sergeant, never staff sergeant. And they were supposed to observe the landing, make sure they see any flaws or anything.
You said 600 or 700 people were killed?
And nobody, and when those who survived were taken to the hospital. And the nurses and doctors were sworn not to mention that affair. And it just came out only a few years ago that on the 50, that Slapped and Sands, the Sands, because they didn't want the Germans to know how bad those sinkings were. And it was kept secret for 50 years or more.
Yeah, I want to see if we can pull this up. You said, were you saying Slap the Sands?
Slapped and Sands in England.
Okay.
Was a beach in England.
Let's see if we can find that. I'd love to read some more info on this. So
I think the actual operation was Operation Tiger. Operation Tiger. Is that right?
I don't know.
I think that was the name of
Slapped
it.
and Sands, all I heard.
Rishi's on it over here.
But the U-boats, there was 3 U-boats, I think, German U-boats,
Yeah.
who came over from the Cherbourg port and sunk them. So nothing was said so that they would not know how much damage they'd done. A whole engineer group was eliminated, I think.
Whoa.
Or artillery group was taken out.
So we have it right here. We got Exercise Tiger, disaster at Slapton Stands, 28th April 1944.
April 20th.
It said, "We sailed along in fatal ignorance," writes Lieutenant Eugene E. Exton, a medical officer aboard the first of 2 tank landing ships to be sunk by German S-boats off the southern coast of England on the night of 27/28 April 1944. The attack, which happened to be in the midst of an Allied dress rehearsal for the Normandy landings, killed hundreds of men. Some of them succumbed to blast injuries and burns, others to drowning or hypothermia. The disaster that beheld Convoy T4 was not a fluke. It was a product of an effort by the Germans to disrupt preparations for the invasion of northwestern France, and it happened as a result of actionable intelligence from the Luftwaffe and Germany's B-Dienst. Tank landing ships, LSTs, slow, unwieldy, and cavernous, were ideal targets for fast torpedo boats and which patrolled those areas that the German Admiralty determined most likely to host enemy convoys and training exercises. With only 1 escort and no meaningful radio capabilities, Convoy T4 stood little chance.
That's the first time I ever heard of that, too. I never heard of that one.
That's nuts, man. So they were getting us, and this is, we had...
It was a fluke.
Yeah.
That was accidental. They caught those ships, and the British got hell for the commander of the British because
I'll bet he
he
did.
wasn't securing the landing.
Yeah. Probably got chewed out a bit.
He did. But
keep in mind, though, Normandy was the largest seaboard invasion in history at that point, and they were so close to enemy-occupied territory. Right. To keep any of it a secret would have been so difficult. There's stories of inflatable tanks that were used, dummy...
the dummy army, the 15th Army.
Yeah.
Patton.
Exactly, because General Patton had slapped a soldier in Sicily, and he got reprimanded, and the Germans didn't think, because he was such a brilliant general, that the Allies would be serious about reprimanding him, and that he would have to be involved in Normandy. So they took him, and they had him in charge of these dummy outfits with the fake names, fake insignia, and it was all a decoy. The Germans thought when you guys, they thought all the Allies were going to land at Calais.
Well, you see that lately where they had these dummy tanks and all, and they blew them up. And they would blow them up, and it looked, from the air, it looked good. They looked real. So they thought for sure Calais was the closest land on France. Calais was a narrow area of the channel.
Yeah.
So where they were. So that's why they were so sure they were going to land at Calais. And they put them there, and it became such a decoy Really, that's why Hitler would not release their Panzer division on D-Day when they were being attacked, because he was sure they were going to come in with that other army.
It's crazy how much intelligence really graduated during World War II and became the thing that, was in charge of the world with all the different things they did. There was the one that was made famous by a movie a couple years ago on Netflix called Operation Mincemeat. Did you ever see that?
I don't think I saw that one.
So this was that you probably heard of this mission at some point. This was the one where I think it was British and U.S. intelligence working together, but Britain was running
British
it.
had the most control.
Yeah, where they tricked the Nazis into thinking that they were going to invade from the south. I want to say it was like Greece instead of Sicily, by getting a drunk dead guy's body.
A major, or a colonel, I forget. He was a British officer.
Well, they
and he had
faked
the
him
papers.
as
They
that.
found the papers on him.
Yep, exactly. So they got a random dead guy and then named him this new colonel, dropped his body into the southern shores of Spain where the Nazis would pick it up, and then they're like, "Oh shit, they're going to Greece," and then we got into Sicily. Stuff like that blows my mind.
Right? Yeah, it's unbelievable how, but so stuff is pretty interesting. And the trouble is, we didn't know anything at the time. We don't know towns, or most of you don't remember towns or any of that, where things are going to happen. But after they happen, now in history we're starting to find out. I found out that I went in the same spot twice, once in September of 44 and once 44 and once in and then the beginning of January or March, or February or March of 45. I was January of 45.
Where was that?
That's in Geneva, Eiffel, in Belgium. When we get to it, I'll talk about more. But we never knew it. We were in and out. But I got a interesting story there.
All right, we're going to get to that soon. We were on D-Day, though, and when that went down. The reason I'd asked, like, when you guys were ready was because I didn't know if maybe, like, the morning of, when they were literally shipping out and people were like, oh, where are they going? If they start to tell you.
I don't recall. All we heard, the planes flying, taken off from the airport nearby, which meant the airborne had to be on the other side or within that area. And airborne, whether both the 101st or 102nd or the 82nd were both there, I don't know. But they had to be in that area because of the plane. And that's where they got on the planes.
Okay. So
a week before D-Day, though, a lot of the soldiers were confined to camp. They were locked down. Even the soldiers who were not going in on D-Day.
Really?
Because they didn't want any leaks. I mean, people talk about leaks today, but back then, I mean, it was even more important that you couldn't have anyone, because there was so much effort was put into trying to fool the Germans, like you mentioned, that we were going to land somewhere else. Right. If we think Omaha Beach was bad right now with the amount of casualties, imagine if the Germans had been prepared and knew that we were coming. 10 times worse.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like rewriting history to say this, but if they'd been prepared, I almost don't know how that could have been successful.
Well, even up until almost noon, I believe, Eisenhower was seriously considering calling them back. Yeah. Because there were so many casualties. There's a town in Bedford, Virginia, the 29th Division.
Well, now, why he was going to call them back? Omaha Beach.
On Omaha.
Omaha Beach turned out to be a disaster. They had a lot of problems. Well, we'll get to that after we catch up.
Okay. Yeah, because one thing, I've had a lot of veteran friends of mine, not World War II guys, but guys who served a long time and saw battle, who certainly have talked to a lot of World War II vets who, survived D-Day and stuff. And they said Saving Private Ryan, the opening scene on the beach, is probably one of the more accurate depictions in military history in the movies. And every time because it's a movie, it's not the real thing, but every time I watch that and you just see the boat come down and just Oh my God, I can't even fathom what would be going through my mind as that hatch comes down.
Well, that unit that they're representing, that's the 29th Division. Besides the Rangers, Tom Hanks and all of them, that's where the 29th Division landed, which was the Maryland, Virginia National Guard. It's called the Blue and Gray because of the Confederate Union ties. And there's this little town called Bedford, Virginia, where the D-Day Memorial is now. Because back then, companies, A, B, C, D, used to be based on where they were from, because a lot of these were National Guard guys.
That's why so many are from that area, because they're all National Guard.
And they changed that later in the war because they realized this is not the way to do it. Because in one day, about 22 of them from this little town were all killed.
Oh.
Right.
And so that town
On D-Day, I think. it was.
has the highest per capita of men killed during during the
But
war.
you're going
Actually,
to take from one place. They got to get, and they're getting killed. They got to be killed from your group. You know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it only makes sense.
Understood.
one thing I just wanted to mention, if you don't mind, when you were talking about the whole mincemeat thing, right? Spain, they talk about these neutral countries. Spain was neutral, but in war, there really is no such thing as neutrality, which is so unfortunate. Even Ireland, you were talking about how you saw Liverpool all blown out.
Right.
Well, I've interviewed veterans who survived that, who grew up there, and they told me that the German bombers, because they couldn't see anything over England, but they used the lights of Ireland. They would fly across the Irish Sea, determine where they were based on the lights in Ireland, and then circle back and bomb the UK.
That's right.
That's nuts.
You never think of that. That's right.
And so the Irish people proclaim, proudly that we were neutral, but in a sense they weren't.
they were accidentally
under
open.
Britain.
That's
a part of it.
wild. Those are the things we also don't
Right.
think
You
about.
don't think
too.
about. That's right.
Yeah. We did that here. There's famous stories. It wasn't just the Jersey Shore; it was up the eastern seaboard because of U-boats.
Right.
But I found this out on episode, I think like 31 with Dr. John Schneider. He was telling me about it. But in America, we had this like citizen agreement that during World War II, at maybe it was 7:00 or something, everyone would turn their lights off
Right.
who lived at the shore because the U-boats wouldn't be able to see exactly where shore was.
You know Ocean City.
Uh-huh.
You know Sea Isle.
Oh yeah.
Well, in between there is Strathmere.
Oh, I know Strathmere well.
Do you? Well, next is between Strathmere and Sea Isle is a little section called Whale Beach. Whales had washed up there, I think.
Yeah.
That's where it got its name. But anyway, there was a gully right off the beach. And a German U-boat used to sit in that gully
Off Strathmere.
off of Strathmere.
Whoa.
After the war, the captain of that submarine turned around and bought ground. And he had the ground right along the beach. He had some places up, small buildings for summer residents.
Uh-huh.
And they turned around, and when the 62 storm came, it washed them out. And the state had to get him across the highway on the other side of, what the heck they call it? The road between,
Route 9?
no, Route 9.
Parkway?
It's on the beach. I can't think of the name. It's from Sea Isle.
Ocean Drive?
Ocean Drive. That's what I'm
I
trying.
know the OD.
I had the wrong thought in my mind. Ocean Drive.
Yeah.
Well, they had to give him after the 62 storm on the other side of the highway,
Whoa.
which was the mainland more.
That's why
The
he
bay's behind him.
was that close though in the gully.
They must have went down to the Deauville or them for a beer.
That's awesome.
And I just talk English
my
and learn to
God.
talk English and watch their brogue, and
Yeah.
it was only a couple blocks away.
This is just this isn't that in the context of time 80 years ago is not that long ago.
I had a place in Strathmere, that's why I said I could tell you.
Oh,
about
so
that.
you know Strathmere real well. Yeah, I know the Deauville. I know the Deauville well. I know what you're talking about. But it's just crazy how many layers there were to this thing.
Right, yeah.
So many.
But
So D-Day happens though. You're not
on D-Day, the ships are turn around. Now, there's still rough seas from the storm.
Mm-hmm.
It's turn around and to come off the ships to get into the landing craft, the fellows had to climb down what they call cargo nets, a big rope nets. They turn hanging over the side of the ships.
Mm-hmm.
And the fellows would have to, they would be fast at the top, had to climb down these nets and get in and bounce a boat. Now, when the wave would come, it lift the little boat and drop the big boat as it would go by. And then when the next wave came, they would go under the big boat, it would raise the big boat and lower the little. Well, you had to time that, so when you had to jump from the cargo net over to the landing craft, and as they're going up and down, if you get slip or anything,
Crushed.
you get crushed.
Oh my God!
Well,
So
that's why
guys
a
were
lot
getting
of a lot of
crushed.
guys were lost that way.
Oh my God!
And think if they
And they
fell
had full cargo, had their equipment with them too.
exactly, if they fell in between with their pack,
So,
There are so many things that could go wrong.
could
that
go
day.
wrong, and and you don't even think of them.
No.
But yeah, then when they landed, a lot of these landing crafts hit sandbars off the beach.
Yeah.
So it would be deep on the other side. So the guys would jump off and they go right down because of their equipment so heavy and it was so deep there. A lot of guys were lost that way.
And then, like we said, the boats would open, and they're just getting
Well, that's
machine
when
gun
they
open
opened the
fire.
boat, the fellows
Yeah.
would jump out.
Yeah.
They'd start running, they'd get into the water, and they go right down with their equipment.
Yeah.
You have 60 to 100 pounds extra
It's weighing them
equipment.
down. Yeah. That's wow. So did you have friends who were there on actual D-Day who
Yeah.
landed? Did you have
I
friends who
fell friends from the 4th Division Association, yeah.
did you have friends who fell that day as well?
They never talked of it, but that was some of the things they pointed out.
Hmm. Now, when did you land on Utah Beach?
I landed on D+8.
D+8.
But the division landed on D-Day, H-hour. The 4th Infantry Division landed D-Day, H-hour on Utah Beach.
And so, but you came 8 days later.
I came in with a group to be an evac hospital, established the first evac hospital in the Utah Beach area.
Oh.
And we went, when we landed, we turned around and on the 15th, we were supposed to rendezvous with 21 nurses and three doctors to establish. In other words, we didn't know it. Up to this point, we're only a paper organization.
Hmm.
So until we rendezvous with the doctors and nurses, we can set up the hospital. So on the 15th, we landed on the 14th. The 15th, the 4th Division at 10 o'clock in the morning put an emergency call down for medics, or that's when it reached us. And they turned around and our whole group, we were supposed to rendezvous with the doctors and nurses at noontime to establish the hospital. At 10 o'clock, they broke our entire outfit up. We had all the personnel to operate, set up and operate in the evac hospital. The enlisted personnel from sergeant down. We had, and the ambulance drivers were sent to 4th Medical. So the entire 4th Division sent an emergency call down for a medic. So they broke us up, and I wound up going to the 12th Infantry Regiment. And then from there, they transferred me to the 2nd Battalion medics.
And where were they when you got to them?
When around the 11th to the 13th, I think, they were up near Monteberg, outside of Monteberg. Monteberg, Utah Beach wasn't the correct beach. The beach they were supposed to land at, Utah, the name of Utah, was to be a mile further west than it was, towards Cherbourg,
Okay.
the port of Cherbourg, or the Atlantic Ocean, whichever you want to call it. Cherbourg is on the channel and but also on the Atlantic Ocean. The bottom of it is the Atlantic Ocean. So that's all Atlantic Ocean on the lower side of it. So anyway, they turn around and when they landed, the tide had carried the ships further to the west, east, further to the east. So it could have been the tides were coming in instead of going out. I don't know. But if it carried to the east, it had to be coming in. And they were supposed to have been, the tide was supposed to be the controlling point for the landing. So, it don't make sense. But anyway, when the fourth landed, they landed on a beach that was a mile west of where they should have landed, or east of where they should have landed. And it may have been a godsend because it was all flooded behind it, the area, and the Germans didn't have it heavy fortified.
Oh, wow.
They didn't expect them to land on a flooded area. So it was an accidental godsend condition, like you might say, where they landed at this beach. And then they had to decide, when they got on the beach, there was a house on the beach. The plans didn't call for a house, which told the general that it was a wrong beach, and the colonel. So they turned around, and now the general was Teddy Roosevelt Jr., who was a brigadier general of the 4th Division. He was the assistant general. And General Barton was the commanding officer. He was the assistant to it. And he insisted to Barton to be able to land. And he wrote a letter and all because Barton refused, because Teddy Roosevelt had been wounded in World War I in the knee, and he had this here, what do they call it? The calcium.
The what?
Calcium in the knee.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
They didn't have to cut his knee off, though.
No.
Okay.
So he had his knee, but it was stiff knee.
Got it.
He walked with a cane. So that's why he walked on D-Day with a cane and only his pistol, because that World War I wound. But anyway, he insisted to Barton, and Barton finally gave in and permitted him to go with his excuses and all. And he's the only general officer, general who landed on D-Day on the first wave throughout the entire landing. That's why he got the Congressional Medal of Honor. Because when they got there, they had to make a determination whether to send the balance of the troops to the correct landing area, beach, or to go from there. And Teddy Roosevelt made a decision that we will go from here. And they figured out a way to get across the flooded area, get the troops through the flooded area and across, because there was a causeway nearby, but they couldn't. But it was zeroed in by the Germans. Zeroed means they had it all, knew all the position. So they had it zeroed in. So they couldn't use that to bring the troops in. So they brought them through the flooded area. And now how they did it? I'll leave a secret out now.
How?
Old Bucket Brigade.
Old Bucket Brigade?
They turned around and lined the tall men in the center because they figured it could only be so deep. And then the tall worked them down. And as the smaller men would come in and lose their footing on the floor of the ocean, they would turn around and be floated across from one to another like a bucket being passed on. And they got them across. That's how they got across. Now that came from somebody who was involved in that deal.
That came from one of your guys?
One of the fellows was involved.
So many things to plan for.
So
Alessi, can you pull up just there should be like a graphic map if we Google it of a map of the invasion of Normandy. It'll probably show the U.S. where the British troops were, where the Canadian troops were, but it was it's a wide area. It's not like one little spot.
I forget how many miles it covered.
Yeah, maybe that third one. Does that look good?
It takes like an hour and a half to get from one end to another.
The first one off the Atlantic was Utah. The second was Omaha. Then there was Gold, Juno, and Sword.
What's an animation?
Oh, yeah. Okay, perfect. So this is a Vox animation, so you can kind of see them spreading out as they land, and then they're gonna go south through France. Can we edit the search to Invasion of Normandy map by Allied country? And see, there was one I was looking at.
You really got a good selection here, don't you?
Yeah, I should have brought this up before.
There,
oh yeah.
Utah Beach is
That's
on
what we
its
want.
own.
That's what we want. Yeah.
In between Utah and Omaha is Point to Hawk, where the Rangers climb the cliffs.
That cliff, right?
Wait, they were climbing cliffs.
Yeah.
Those are not those are the Rangers.
105, 110-foot cliff.
Whoa. So you can see. So U.S., and then British going on to Gold, Canadian going on to Juno.
You see that one in between the near Omaha Beach?
Yeah, in between Omaha and Gold.
That's Point to Hawk. It's a 100
the Rangers.
5 or 110-foot cliff.
And it was being protected by machine gun fire, right?
And mortars.
Of Nazis.
They had pillboxes sitting up on top of it with guns in. That's why they were trying to knock out.
Whoa.
The guns so they couldn't hit the ships or the landing on the beaches.
It's amazing.
How the guys could climb that, and they were being shot at from above and dropping hand grenades on them and all.
How does anyone survive that?
I don't know, but
Like-
they did it.
Yeah.
For anyone who
I think the 5th Ranger made the landing, and the 2nd Ranger came up the side and went around it.
Yeah.
Ranger.
For anyone who's seen Band of Brothers, if you notice, the airborne landed mostly in the Utah Beach sector, the 82nd and the 101st.
The 82nd was supposed to land around St. Maricles. But instead of that, some landed in St. Maricles, but some of the 101st landed spread all over land in that flooded area and drowned.
But there's a scene in the series, and it's what Easy Company of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment did. They knocked out some artillery, Dick Winters and his group, and that's some of the accounting of why there was not as many heavy casualties on Utah Beach, because a lot of those artillery pieces were aimed at Utah Beach. And so the casualties on Utah Beach compared to Omaha were a lot lighter.
Yeah.
Thank God.
They had less than 200. Now, like you're mentioning, when the 101st, first thing, the Germans had trees. They found out trees.
What are you looking for?
Tree trunks.
Tree trunks, yeah.
Sticking out to look like guns out of the
oh, wow.
out of the pillboxes.
Yeah.
Here they found they were back in an open field where the Germans had a battery set up, and that's what the 101st ran into. When they got started assembling, coming along, they ran into it.
Yeah.
They were able to go in and blow it up. And the Germans didn't know what was coming. They didn't expect them.
And you had some Philly guys in there too. You had Babe Heffron, Garnier. That 101st was well represented by Philly.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you were starting this by explaining the 4th Infantry Division. They landed. Once you went in D+8, you were then sent to where they were to join up with them, right?
I joined them outside of. I joined in Monneberg. In Monneberg, it was we were in pillbox out along the side. It was high ground around the side of Monneberg.
Can we pull up Monneberg on a map?
Same as Cherbourg. Cherbourg, outside Cherbourg, they had the high ground too.
Yeah.
Pillbox on.
Division.
Well, the Germans had the pillbox on, and that's where I think I never sat down to figure it out. I think that would probably be about a mile to where they should have landed in that area, because it was supposed to be heavily fortified. and where they landed was not heavily fortified. So, like I say, it was a godsend where they landed, and they got off the beach with less than 200 casualties. One place 197, another place 199.
Right.
But it's
Whereas I don't remember
right.
the casualties on Omaha offhand, but
But Omaha,
it was
when
insane.
they came in Omaha, they ran into heavy. Not only that, I just was over there, and in about a half a mile, maybe a quarter of a mile, there's this big high dune, and they had to go up over those dunes and get down. So that was their trouble. They ran into a wall, like more or less.
Did you guys back in England while you were there
Right.
when they did this invasion? I would imagine you guys got word, maybe inside. Correct me if I'm
We
wrong.
didn't get word. No.
You didn't get word
No,
a couple days later about whether it was successful or not.
I think we had to wait till the stars dropped. I forget when they came out. It's been maybe a week later.
So they didn't tell you it was even successful for a week. No. Wow.
To my remembers, no.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.